Okay, I seem to be getting a lot of echoing. I couldn't find a place with good lighting, so I had to come over here, and I'm actually kneeling down right now. But today I wanted to talk about, in my previous video talking about healthcare, that was, I think, the day right after, or maybe the day of, I'm not quite, I don't quite recall. But I was talking about healthcare, and I forgot to mention the constitutional, my constitutional objection to the bill, as well as, nullification. So, okay, first of all, I want to talk about my constitutional objection to the healthcare bill, and that is something very, very, very simple. If you look at the Constitution, if you look at Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, there are 17 powers listed. Authority over healthcare isn't one of them. Now, Congress has these 17 powers to exercise, and obviously they have usurped these powers. They have legislated things like abortion and have come up with all kinds of nationalized healthcare programs, and they've kind of exceeded their powers. The president isn't supposed to declare war. That's supposed to be a power of Congress, and the list could go on. But let's focus on healthcare here. In the Constitution, that is not an authority of Congress. It's very obvious. It's outlined in there. It's very clear. There is no power for the federal government to even be involved in healthcare. Okay, so if we look at the 10th Amendment, if we look at the 10th Amendment, you will see the words, the powers not delegated to the federal government by the Constitution. By the Constitution, that's key. Nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states or to the people. Therefore, healthcare, if it's to be managed by any government, is only supposed to be done so by state legislatures. Now, obviously, I'm a personal opponent of socialized medicine. However, I realize a state's right to enact it, but I would, if they try to do that in Wisconsin, I'd be, at the front lines opposed to it. So the constitutional objections are very obvious. Now people will try to point to the Supremacy Clause, but that really just begs the question. What is the Supremacy Clause referring to? The Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and all of the judges in the land, including those in the states, are to abide by it. But if the Constitution gives no authority to the federal government to nationalize healthcare or have any authority over healthcare whatsoever, and if you look at the 10th Amendment and it says that any powers that are not vested in Article 1, Section 8 are those powers of the states only. And so, the rest is left to the states and to the people of the states. Then how does the Supremacy Clause apply? It's not necessarily a federal supremacy clause. It's a statement of constitutional supremacy, and that means respecting states' rights and the states' rights to go against unconstitutional federal laws, because the Supreme Court is a branch of the federal government. And if it's a branch of the federal government, it will always rule in favor of itself. Now, I saw a recent interview on NPR with Tom Woods, who hardly got to talk. They should call it National Socialist Radio, because most of the callers that called in were, of course, socialists, and the debaters were socialists, and even the mediator wasn't unbiased. He was a socialist as well. So Tom Woods only got like 5 minutes to talk the whole 35 minutes he was on there. But if we... he made an interesting analogy. If I'm in an argument with one of my friends, and I say, let my cousin dispute this, and I'm really close to my cousin is going to take my side. It's going to be that same way with the federal government. If we have a dispute between the federal government and the states, the Supreme Court, a branch of the federal government, is inevitably almost always going to rule in favor of the federal government. And that's been true throughout history. And if you look back at history, when that power was, the Supreme Court was seen as the supreme authority of the Constitution, that's exactly what happened. So, one topic that comes up is nullification. And that's the state's ability to nullify unconstitutional laws, meaning that they can overturn laws that are not constitutional, meaning powers that are delegated to the states and not the federal government. If a state doesn't want to have if a state doesn't want to comply with the nationalized health care plan, which isn't constitutional, and if they want to leave health care up to the states, whether they want to decide to have free market health care, which is what I advocate, or they want to advocate a socialized medicine as they have in Massachusetts, then they have every right to do so. And by nullifying the nationalized health care plan, they're basically saying, look, the federal government is engaging in an unconstitutional prerogative. Therefore, we have the right to overturn this law. It's not constitutional. And it can be viewed as civil disobedience, but it has a lot to do with natural law and decentralization, because if you vest all the power in one central authority, that power is always going to rule in favor of itself. And if it rules in favor of itself, it's always going to vote to add power to its authority. And that's very dangerous, because if we have one authority, if we have a one-size-fits-all social policy, we won't have competing jurisdictions. We won't have, we won't have as many, if we don't have like 50 examples of which laws work and which laws don't, then we'll have all the power vested in one authority, and we won't know, but the examples won't be set. Basically, localization is much better, because you can, seeing it at a smaller level, it's easier to enact change at the level and fight authoritarian measures on those levels, and it's a lot. You can vote with your feet, and if you don't like a law, you can move somewhere else. If you don't like the taxes in one state, you can move to another state where the taxes are better, and that basically tells states, look, your taxes are too high. You're going to lose revenue if people are moving out of your state. So basically, that's why nullification is important. That's why states' rights are important. And that's why states having the majority of the power in this country is important. And even secession is a natural right, because a ruler forcing a population under his rule with an iron fist is more characteristic of a dictator than it is of a champion of liberty. And so people have a natural right to live under a government that serves them well and leaves them to be free and prosperous. They have a right to live under a government that reflects their values, and a government that does not always usurp its power and abuse its power, and a government that is honest and tells its people what it's doing, and making honest rules, and protecting the rights of all the people equally. And so that's basically my view on these important issues. So in Wisconsin, for example, I'd like to see a nullification campaign. I know there's a group on Facebook that I joined called the Wisconsin Nullification Project. Now, I don't know if any of these people are going to organize. That's the only problem. I'd like to be organized in one of these groups. I'd like to get together with some people and speak out. And I haven't been in I haven't been in any protests. So I'd really like to get involved in a protest and get together with some people and get my voice heard. I think, YouTube and the internet is one way to get my voice heard, but I feel like I want to get out there. So basically, I think Wisconsin should nullify this, and I think every other state, if they believe in the Constitution, if they believe in states' rights, if they believe that healthcare is not the authority, is not for the federal government to decide, if they believe that the federal government has no place in healthcare and no place in issues like abortion, like states should have a right to make abortion illegal, and if they believe that the federal government has no place in prayer in school or flag burning or censorship or any of those other things, then I think that it is the duty of every state to nullify this unconstitutional law. Okay, so I'm running out of time here. I'm going to, I'm going to say goodbye, farewell, and have a fabulous day.